Hello, everybody. Hold on. Let me go live on. Let me see if I could go live with Instagram. There we go. We are currently live on Instagram. I'm trying to do it on my author page. So those of you who are part of that area, I'd like to say thank you. Now, I always have to do this disclaimer that, anything I mention here is my opinion only. I am not a professional, medical, or anything of the sort. So, welcome to another episode of the Weekly Brunch. We're trying to change things up a bit and try to be a little bit more informative and actually have this as a weekly brunch. And since this is a weekly brunch and I like to share the brunch experience with you, for brunch today, we had 2 over easy eggs, bacon, and homemade bread with clotted cream and homemade cantaloupe jam. Hopefully soon. Let's see. I don't know what happened. Give me a moment. There we go. There we go. I'm sorry. For some reason, I disappeared there. Well, it looked like I disappeared there. There we go. I'm sorry. Visually, it looks like I disappeared. So for the weekly brunch, that's what we had today. What did you have for brunch? If you'd like to share an image, take a picture. And also, of course, I have homemade pineapple mimosa. Brunch is not brunch without a mimosa. Well, not all the time. Sometimes it's tea or coffee. Now, this has been an exciting week, and at least here for me, here in New York, it's been quite busy. And there are some things I know I try to stay spiritual, but you can't be spiritual and completely block out the world. So there's a lot of things happening in the world, and let's have a chat about it. This week has been a very busy week when it comes to sports. Those of you who love soccer or tend to be immigrants are very big on soccer and everything else. So the World Cup is in the North American countries, which means Mexico, United States, and Canada is hosting the World Cup. So it's been very busy. And for here in New York, it's also very busy for us because basketball has been a great thing for us here this season. But I'll get into that later. So let's see. And this does ties into my theme, even though it may be unusual, for spiritual growth and development, because spiritual growth and development does not mean blocking yourself off. I believe that most people who may not think so, but I believe it's important to be at least aware of what's going on and not to isolate yourself from what's going on too. That's important as well. So let's talk about the World Cup. As busy as it's been, it started off last week, and we're going to just look at where the countries that have played so far, where they're standing. Well, and there are different groups. There's Group A to Group L. For the record, Group, let me see, E? Yeah, Group E to L has not played yet. So there's no rankings there. There's no points gathered there. It started on Thursday, and in Group A, we have Mexico and South Korea gained 3 points. Congratulations. And unfortunately, Czechia and South Africa has not gained any points so far. In Group B, Everyone got 1 point each, which was Switzerland, Canada, Qatar, and Bosnia. All right. Group C. Scotland gained 3 points. Congratulations, Scotland. But I'm sad to say, due to that, Haiti did not get any points. Morocco and Brazil gained 1 point each. In Group D, there is some happiness on this side of the world for me. Group D, USA and Australia gained 3 points, and unfortunately, Turkey and Paraguay did not gain anything. And like I said, the rest of the groupings have not played yet, so I guess we'll have an update next Sunday. Other sports news, this one hits me a little bit harder. It hits me a little bit closer. And I have to give some background because I'm a big Ewing fan. And when Ewing last year and had a chance to get that ring, I was a little excited and then disappointed when they didn't win. But this year, the Knicks have actually done something spectacular, and they won the NBA championship for the first time in 53 years. Why this is close and dear to me. 53 years ago, I was born. So the year I wasn't even born when they won last time. So I'm very grateful that they won. And it was a big thing. No, I did not watch any of these games. I do have other stuff I do, but I do keep up on it. But it's a big deal here in New York, and I have to stress how much of a big deal it is, because I think for the first time, every borough, and although Long Island's not, Suffolk, Nassau and Suffolk is not part of the boroughs, even they were celebrating, I would assume. But every borough in New York City was in mass celebration. Yes, X is full of the destruction that happened in Midtown, but there were peaceful celebrations as well throughout the 5 boroughs. There was celebration, and I don't think in my entire lifetime have I ever seen such celebration here in New York. So yes, it's a big deal. It's a big deal being a New Yorker. I actually knew, and I found out, not because I watched the game, it's because fireworks went off right after the game. And I'm sure it went off in every borough, in every inch of this place. It was a pre-gamer for the 4th of July. So it was beautiful in the aspect of celebration, which, to tell you the truth, as a New Yorker, we needed a win. All right, so that is the sports world. Let's look at the financial and technical world. SpaceX launched one of the biggest IPOs in the stock market last week as well. If you watch the stock market, if you have money invested in that, this is a big thing. It's something to keep an eye on if you invest. Also, if you're into AI, this is very important. And I'll say why it's important once I say so. The state attorneys general has opened a multi-state probe into OpenAI over potential harm. If you're a thinking person, if you're someone who pays attention, this would be important to keep an eye on, because that means regulations and some really heavy-hitting rules might be coming down when dealing with OpenAI. Is this good? Is this bad? I don't know, but this is just a pretense of what's to come. So share your comments, if you will, your ideas on this situation, but this is something to just keep an eye on. I'm going to keep an eye on. AI is basically, it's already infiltrated our lives. I've had the talk a couple of weeks back. If you want YouTube, I haven't uploaded that audio yet in Spreaker, but it should be sometime this week dropping. But check out what was said during that particular weekly brunch about AI, and it's coming. And like I said, the cat's out of the bag. Now is how do we adjust and keep an eye on some of the regulations and the do's and don'ts that's going to come down due to what I believe was have been some of the things of misuse of it. So just keep an eye out, and remember, you have your representatives you could always go to and speak to about that. So that's the stock market. Now let's talk about the Middle East. All I could say is still escalating. I'm a Generation X baby, so it's the story of that region as far as I'm concerned. So the ceasefire is being ignored. Things are escalating. We'll see what happened this week in that situation. Also have had some tremendous weather situations that's been specifically in certain parts of the Northeast and certain parts of the Midwest. Tornadoes, heat surges, even here in New York, if you have not been paying attention, we have had at least 2 or 3 this past week of air quality alerts. So if you've gone out and you're not paying attention to this and you notice that it's a little bit harder to breathe, that is why the quality of air has been bad. And a lot of these weather turbulence things have caused power outages, flight cancellations if you're planning to travel, and other types of traveling delays. Now that's the gist of what's going on in the world and on outside last week. But now I have to ask you, and we're going to bring this back to, what about you? Are you taking care of yourself in all this? We've had, especially up here in New York, we've had a large surge of heat waves. Are you hydrating yourself? Are you still conducting your meditation and practicing your gratitude? I know summer, last month, if you have kids, this month has been very, very busy with proms and graduations and finals and everything else. So you're taking care of other people, but are you taking care of yourself? Are you eating properly? I have to share something that really, really, actually, this last week, I have been doing a lot of introspection and a lot of inner thinking. And right here, I'm showing an image of one of my prizes that made me actually shriek like a little girl this morning. My garden has been coming along slowly but surely. And what I noticed was I was concerned about my nostril, and I'm probably pronouncing that incorrectly. And this is an herb. It's an edible flower, beautiful flower. And I'm trying to coax, because I have my tomatoes growing. I'll show everything. I'll probably do a whole segment on the Loon's YouTube page on my whole gardening adventure. But I planted these not only to attract the bees for my tomato plants, but I also plant this because this is an edible herb, which you could use for teas. You could put in salads. So, from what I'm told, and I'll let you know when I experiment with it, that you could use it in replacement of pepper. And you could use the entire plant, the younglings, the mids, the leaves, the flowers, dehydrated for a nice tea and everything else. So that is one of the things that made me stop and think today of, how a hobby could change into something that brings you such joy and pride. Um, what do I mean? I hit so much joy when I saw that. So much joy. It made me so happy to see them, um, to see it bloom. And it made me want to share something that in my practice of gratitude, as practicing spiritualists, there's usually something that we don't pay attention to, which is ourselves as well as tending to our environment. The gardening has showed me so much. When just because you're spiritual, I have to say, just because you're spiritual does not mean you don't get depressed. It doesn't mean you don't get annoyed. You don't walk on water. You don't um, automatically see the secrets of the universe. It's a process. It's a process. It's a process of changing your habits, changing your mindset. We always talk about mindfulness. And you tend what used to annoy you, you appreciate more. What do I mean? Well, lately here in New York, we've been having sudden downpours. And when I mean sudden downpours, I mean sudden downpours. Not like in the spring where it's like flooding everything, but it's enough to be annoying if you're going out somewhere, carrying an umbrella, taking the precautions. Now, prior to this, I'm going to share, and this, like I said, this is my experience, and maybe you feel the same way. I used to get annoyed when it rained. Downright upset me, ruined my day. And I'm sure many people could identify with this. Now I got to change and wear something completely different. I can't wear the shoes I want to wear. I have to tie my hair up. I have to wear something plastic that might make me hotter later. And this past week, one of the downpours happened while I was at home, getting ready to go to sleep. And it came all of a sudden. Had to turn off the air conditioner, had to make sure all the windows were closed so it doesn't get wet inside. But I was happy. Why was I happy? Because I have my little garden growing. I was like, instead of saying, oh, this is an inconvenience, I was thinking, you know, my garden is getting watered right now, so I don't have to water it tomorrow. They get some natural water instead of the water I usually give them. I was happy and overjoyed. Yes, the little things, the little things. But that was the biggest form of gratitude I experienced. And after I thought this, I realized, oh, before when I was upset, it was more like my ego was in place instead of me appreciating my environment and appreciating nature and being one. I was being ungrateful that the rain came down, cooled down the temperatures, fed hopefully all good nature, uh, plant life, because not all is, I found out the other day, not all is helpful. Because I take in Google, you could take pictures and see what type of vegetation you have around you as you walk around. And some of them are not so nice. Good to know. So with this garden, because I'm going to always go back to this garden because it's my focus point at this point, is the seeds you plant progress at their own pace, not yours. And this goes with everything you do in life. We 2 Sabbaths ago, because we just went past Beltane. In a star, you plant your seeds, you plant your intentions. we actually do plant during a star too, because it's supposed to be the ideal time to plant. Not so much this year, but that's another discussion. But I say this to say, as I'm growing and I'm teaching myself the right ways to plant seeds, which I consider every experience as part of your spiritual journey. This is why I share this. I'm watching all these homesteaders, all these home gardeners with people who have backyards. All I have is a balcony. But all these people who are planting their gardens and stuff, they're already picking up their harvest. There are some people I watch who are homesteaders they're on their second round of harvesting. And as you can see with the image I showed, that's my first flower. My peas did not produce this year. That's because the Mother Nature was not cooperating with us. I think she was going through a temper tantrum. But my lima beans are just starting to come out. I'm hoping they won't burn out. My tomatoes are just starting to sprout because I do from seeds. I don't do seedlings. I direct sow. But as I'm seeing these people with their plush gardens, I'm struggling with my little space, which I thought would grow faster. There's a point to this. Those seedlings that I planted and continue to plant, they're going to grow at their own pace with their own strength on how I feed them. Just because I don't have the abundance that everybody else have does not mean that I stop fertilizing my soil. It does not mean I stop watering my soil. It just means I have to stop for a moment, be patient, and enjoy the journey. The journey will have rainy days. Journey will have stunted growth. But at the end, if I continue to feed my soil, water my soil, and for those of us who are very extreme when it comes to gardening and plants, even talk to, they will bloom. And they will bloom beautifully. Now, will everything bloom? No. Will everything bloom when I want it? No. Let's bring this back to your spiritual growth. First, don't compare yourself to anybody else. Walk in other people's steps. You do not have the same experience and background as anybody else. Yes, the material 9 times out of 10 that you look at, you educate yourself with, is the same material, but it hit different. It always hits different. Even if you follow me on Occult Rejects as well, at times we talk about initiation, we talk about different topics and everything else on the progress of spiritual growth. If you go through initiation, whether naturally or you seek it out, it will hit differently for everybody who goes through it. Even if you go through it on the same day as somebody else or the same week, same month, yes, the initiations are probably a paper thing, is a paper copy, but your experience will bring out what you require. So comparing yourself to others, yes, you can talk to other people and say, well, I'm having trouble with this. And keep in mind that the journey is your journey. And I think when a lot of people, if they talk about the spiritual journey, they forget that it's an individual's journey. Yes, we discuss it. Yes, we try to understand it, but you also understand it in your own time. That's saying nothing is ever revealed to you until it's time, something like that. I paraphrase. And this is very important. And as I see a lot of people, some people struggle, some people don't, with their spiritual growth, and they compare. They compare themselves to the Joneses. Why? Why do you compare yourself to the Joneses? The Joneses didn't walk through your steps. The Joneses didn't experience what you experienced. The Joneses didn't make the choices you made. And that goes for life, that goes for your spiritual journey. Educate yourself. You practice, that's why you practice mindfulness. That's why you practice gratitude. If you practice mindfulness and gratitude, and like I said in every episode, and it's always going to be a thing, mindfulness and gratitude, it will help you remember that this is your journey. This is where you are. This is also what you have experienced and what has caused you to have this particular gratitude towards it. And this helps you grow. I'm trying to grow this channel and trying to stick to it being an extension of 30 days of Vista Within. But I started to realize that to a point, there was a level of isolation happening. And I understand, yes, if we're going to look at the tarot, when people go on their spiritual journey, you want to be a hermit. Everybody does it. Even I did it. Even I still do it at times. But you can't grow. A seed does not grow if it stays within its shell. A seed does not flower until it leaves its shell and goes through the steps of growth, which is uncomfortable, which means it has to allow itself to be vulnerable to the elements of its environment, which means it could mean it's vulnerable to insects, it's vulnerable to birds, it's vulnerable to other predators that may come and try to devour it. But it doesn't know if it can survive the elements and its surroundings if it stays in its shell. It also will never be that beautiful flower or whatever purpose it's supposed to fruit unless it takes that risk. Yes, I am so happy that that flower bloomed, and I saw that bloom this morning because it wasn't there yesterday. Trust me, it wasn't there. And it bloomed in this environment where we had some hellacious winds these last couple of weeks. It bloomed under downpours. I mean, downpours that disheveled some of my soil in the planters. We need a hermit stage. We need a moment to go within. But that's not our permanent residence. We have to go out and experience. Yes, New York City was a madhouse last night. I stayed in, didn't want any part of it. And with that being said, not wanting any part of it does not mean I didn't celebrate, but I just took that advice. But I still celebrated in my own way. I also experienced, I didn't block out the joys that was happening. I even acknowledge it in the beginning of this show. You can't shelter yourself for spiritual growth because you stunt yourself, if that makes sense, maybe. But it's important to understand using discernment when interacting and allowing what the outside world provides for you is important in your spiritual growth. Also, using your discernment when using your discernment when allowing the good things in, because if you're a hermit, yes, you protect yourself from the bad, but you also siphon yourself off from the good. And this week, I would advise try to find that balance. Yeah, okay, if you're not into sports, which a lot of the people I associate with um, within my tribe, yeah, I've been told, yeah, I don't care for sports. Okay. They don't deter me when I talk about sports, when I loosely, and I'm not a diehard sports fan either, but it's good to see, I'm happy. The US is in the World Cup, uh, Haiti's in the World Cup, also the Knicks winning. Yes, that brings me much joy. That brings me joy, but I don't get overjoyed. I'm mindful. I'm grateful for those outer wins that I have nothing to do with except being a supportive fan. But also, I am also supportive of the things I am a hand in. I'm a hand in my garden. I'm a hand in that dish that I made, which was a treat for me because I don't know how other people do it, but I can't make breakfast like that every morning. So gratitude, mindfulness, discernment. Yes, there's a lot of bad things happening in the world, but I'm not going to stay boarded up in my house either due to that. I acknowledge it. You take precautions. You keep an eye on things. And that's what you do in your spirituality. You don't jump on every bandwagon. That's why you practice mindfulness. That's why you practice gratitude. And that's why you practice stillness. Now, I'm trying to get better with my social media. And I do have a couple of audio things coming down, which won't be on which won't be exactly on YouTube. It'll probably be more audio, because I'm sure I like the weekly brunch. I love the lives, but just me talking is probably not what you want to see all the time. So once a week, I think is good, and on the occasional occult rejects. But I do want to share some of the things I've learned and some of my opinions with you when it comes down walking down the spiritual path. Now, I know some people are turned off because I deal with the occult, I deal with paganism, and I still consider myself loosely a Christian. I'm a cultist. That's what I am. And either you like it or you don't. But if anything, I hope that you find something helpful in it. Also, I do plan on sharing some things on cooking eventually and gardening, but actually a particular gardening, which if you follow me on Judy Eats, which is my other one where I share my garden, my dishes and the things I ferment. And I call it city homesteading because I think it's something that we could do. It's part of the hobby situation, and it also provides for you. So I'm going to do a little twist on that, and hopefully you guys will like it. It'll probably be coming out in a month or so. So keep an eye out for that. But during this week, because I always like to give homework for the week, during this week, I would say look and see where you're finding the balance for your spiritual growth and how you intake what's going on the outside world. Until then, I'd say have a beautiful week. Please stay hydrated. Don't forget to drink your water. Remember your health. The one thing that we have going on is our body, and without this body, we cannot function. So just stay hydrated, keep your nutrients up, and hopefully with the other things I have coming down, it will help. Until next week, I'd like to say have a beautiful week. Enjoy. And it's a beautiful Sunday, at least here in New York. So go outside and touch some grass. Until next time.